Which of the following is an example of a physiological communication barrier? A. Speaking too fast. B. Hearing impairment. C. Using technical jargon. D. Lack of empathy. The correct answer is B. Physiological barriers can include hearing impairments, visual impairments, or any physical condition that hinders communication. A physical communication barrier can occur due to A. Lack of trust. B. Geographical distance. C. Cultural differences. D. Gender bias. The correct answer is B. Physical barriers refer to obstacles such as distance, noise, or any environmental factor that disrupts communication. Difficulty understanding a foreign language is an example of which communication barrier? A. Emotional barrier. B. Language barrier. C. Gender barrier. D. Interpersonal barrier. The correct answer is B. Language barriers arise when language differences prevent effective communication between individuals who speak different languages. Which of the following is an example of a psychological communication barrier? A. Speaking too loudly. B. Being defensive. C. Not maintaining eye contact. D. Using inappropriate language. The correct answer is B. Psychological barriers involve factors like emotions, attitudes, perceptions, or mental states that affect communication, such as defensiveness or closed-mindedness. What type of barrier can be present when someone refuses to acknowledge their emotions during a conversation? A. Physiological barrier. B. Interpersonal barrier. C. Gender barrier. D. Psychological barrier. The correct answer is D. Psychological barriers can arise when individuals suppress or refuse to acknowledge their emotions, affecting their communication with others. Lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence can contribute to A. Interpersonal barriers. B. Language barriers. C. Physical barriers. D. Cultural barriers. The correct answer is A. Interpersonal barriers can be exacerbated by a lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, impacting how individuals connect and communicate with others. Which of the following is not considered a physiological communication barrier? A. Hearing loss. B. Speech impediment. C. Visual impairment. D. Accent differences. The correct answer is D. Accent differences are related to language barriers, not physiological barriers. In the context of communication barriers, what defines a cultural communication barrier? A. Misunderstanding slang terms. B. Differences in values and beliefs. C. Using excessive gestures. D. Inconsistent body language. The correct answer is B. Cultural communication barriers arise from differences in values, beliefs, customs, and norms between individuals or groups. Difficulty understanding a foreign language is an example of which communication barrier? A. Interpersonal barrier. B. Physical barrier. C. Cultural barrier. D. Language barrier. The correct answer is D. Language barriers hinder effective communication when individuals speak different languages. What type of barrier can result from a lack of trust between individuals? A. Interpersonal barrier. B. Emotional barrier. C. Psychological barrier. D. Cultural barrier. The correct answer is A. Interpersonal barriers often arise from distrust, leading to ineffective communication. Emotional communication barriers can manifest as A. Openness to feedback. B. Empathy towards others. C. Defensiveness or anger. D. Clarity in speech. The correct answer is C. Emotional barriers often lead to defensive behavior, anger, or clouded communication due to emotional reactions. Lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence can contribute to A. Physical barriers. B. Language barriers. C. Cultural barriers. D. Interpersonal barriers. The correct answer is D. Lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence can lead to interpersonal barriers, affecting communication skills and relationships. What type of barrier can result from differences in physical abilities or health conditions that affect communication? A. Physiological barrier. B. Physical barrier. C. Cultural barrier. D. Language barrier. The correct answer is A. Physiological barriers in communication arise from factors related to the body's physical state, such as hearing loss, speech disorders, or neurological conditions that impact communication abilities. When cultural norms, values, and beliefs clash, what type of communication barrier may arise? A. Physiological barrier. B. Physical barrier. C. Cultural barrier. D. Language barrier. The correct answer is C. A cultural communication barrier happens when people from different cultures have trouble understanding each other's customs, values, and communication styles. What is an example of a language communication barrier? A. Misinterpretation of body language. B. Biased assumptions based on gender. C. Lack of trust between communicators. D. Difficulty in understanding verbal expressions in a foreign language. The correct answer is D. Difficulty in understanding a foreign language can lead to miscommunications, misunderstandings, and barriers in effective communication. What communication barrier can arise from a lack of shared confidence or rapport between communicators? A. Interpersonal barrier. B. Emotional barrier. C. Cultural barrier. D. Language barrier. The correct answer is A. Interpersonal barriers can emerge when there's a lack of trust, rapport, or mutual understanding between communicators, hindering effective communication. In the context of communication barriers, what may result from conflicting cultural norms, values, and beliefs? A. Physiological barrier. B. Language barrier. C. Interpersonal barrier. D. Cultural barrier. The correct answer is D. Cultural communication barriers can arise when differing cultural backgrounds lead to misunderstandings or conflicts in communication. What is an example of a language communication barrier? A. Physical disability. B. Gender bias. C. Difficulty in understanding a foreign language. D. Lack of self-awareness. The correct answer is C. Difficulty understanding a foreign language can create communication barriers, especially in cross-cultural interactions. What communication barrier may arise from a lack of mutual trust between individuals engaging in communication? A. Psychological barrier. B. Interpersonal barrier. C. Physiological barrier. D. Physical barrier. The correct answer is B. Interpersonal barriers can occur when there is a lack of trust, rapport, or mutual understanding between communicators. Which of the following is an example of a psychological communication barrier? A. Difficulty in understanding a foreign language. B. Emotional avoidance during conversations. C. Physical disability affecting communication. D. Cultural clashes in communication. The correct answer is B. Psychological barriers can manifest as emotional avoidance, denial, or other mental obstacles that hinder effective communication. How might emotional communication barriers show up in our interactions with others? A. Enhancing empathy and understanding. B. Encouraging open dialogue. C. Blocking emotional expression or connection. D. Facilitating clear communication. The correct answer is C. Emotional communication barriers can hinder emotional expression, connection, or understanding, impacting the quality of interpersonal interactions. What type of barrier is present when someone avoids acknowledging or addressing their emotions during a conversation? A. Emotional barrier. B. Language barrier. C. Cultural barrier. D. Physiological barrier. The correct answer is A. When people avoid their feelings while talking, emotional barriers can pop up. How can a lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence affect communication interactions? A. Promote effective communication. B. Facilitate emotional expression. C. Contribute to misunderstandings and conflicts. D. Improve listening skills. The correct answer is C. A lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence can lead to misunderstandings, conflicts, and ineffective communication. Which of the following is not considered a physiological communication barrier? A. Mobility impairment. B. Hearing loss. C. Speech difficulties. D. Gender stereotypes. The correct answer is D. Physiological communication barriers are related to physical conditions that affect communication abilities, not gender stereotypes or biases. Which of the following describes a physiological communication barrier? A. Speaking without proper vocal control. B. Hearing impairment affecting listening comprehension. C. Cultural differences leading to misinterpretation. D. Psychological barriers hindering message reception. The correct answer is B. Hearing impairment is an example of a physiological communication barrier because it directly affects the ability to receive and process auditory information. What can lead to a physical communication barrier? A. Lack of emotional intelligence. B. Gender stereotypes. C. Differences in physical abilities or health conditions. D. Language barriers. The correct answer is C. Physical communication barriers can happen because of differences in physical abilities or health conditions that make it hard to send or receive messages clearly. How can a cultural communication barrier be defined? A. Interpersonal conflicts causing misunderstandings. B. Lack of self-awareness in communication. C. Clash of cultural norms, values, and beliefs. D. Inability to express emotions effectively. The correct answer is C. A cultural communication barrier arises from clashes in cultural norms, values, and beliefs, leading to misunderstandings and difficulties in communication. In the context of communication barriers, what does a language barrier entail? A. Physical limitations affecting speech. B. Gender bias influencing language use. C. Difficulty in understanding foreign languages. D. Psychological challenges in message decoding. The correct answer is C. Language barriers happen when people have trouble understanding other languages, making it hard to communicate effectively. What is gender bias considered in communication barriers? A. Physiological barrier. B. Cultural barrier. C. Language barrier. D. Gender barrier. The correct answer is D. Gender bias in communication is a barrier, affecting how well people communicate. How can a physiological communication barrier be defined in the context of communication obstacles? A. Impairment in hearing or vision. B. Lack of emotional intelligence. C. Prejudice based on gender. D. Language differences. The correct answer is A. A physiological communication barrier refers to impairments in hearing or vision that hinder effective communication. What type of barrier can result from physical disabilities or health conditions that impede communication between individuals? A. Physiological barrier less than break time equals 1s greater than. B. Cultural barrier less than break time equals 1s greater than. C. Emotional barrier less than break time equals 1s greater than. D. Language barrier less than break time equals 1s greater than. The correct answer is A. Barriers arising from differences in physical abilities or health conditions that affect communication are classified as physiological barriers.